Hey guys, sorry I'm not here today, so I'm just gonna give you some announcements so I don't forget to tell you. First of all, make sure you answer your bell work. It's probably written on the whiteboard, but just in case, it's right here. Make sure you describe one cycle from the previous day that we discussed, either the water, nitrogen, phosphorus, or carbon and oxygen cycle. And make sure, please, that you have turned in your cycle drawings to the tray. I will collect them for a grade when I return. And you're welcome for the people who didn't do it, but your vocab, I'm just going to have to check on Friday. You're lucky that you get another day if you didn't do it. Alright, so make sure you get out your notes. We're going to take some notes on energy and how energy is being transferred in an ecosystem and how we're going to display that with the activity that you're going to do after you watch this video. So the first thing let's talk about is energy in an ecosystem. We talked about yesterday the first and second law of thermodynamics that states that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It's just transferred from one form to another. So all ecosystems depend on autotrophs because they provide energy for the entire ecosystem. This makes sense because without the autotrophs, without the plants, there's no way for us to use the sunlight or consume the energy that the sun's giving off into energy that we can use for our cellular work. Most autotrophs need sunlight, but remember that some use a chemosynthetic process, chemosynthesis, we talked about it in the Archaea kingdom, that can make their energy from inorganic compounds. And I believe I showed you a video of those hydrothermal vents that are found in the bottom of the ocean. And scientists believe that they the bacteria that live in the bottom of the ocean use chemosynthesis to help produce those thriving environments down where sunlight is never at. In summary, you just need to make sure that all ecosystems have energy, and all ecosystems rely on energy and how energy is being passed from one organism to the other. Alright, so let's talk about the difference between food chains and food webs. Hopefully you've seen a food chain before and a food web, but just in case, a food chain is the simplest way to look at how energy is being transported in an ecosystem because it links the feeding relationships. So very simple, a food chain is a single relationship between organisms. So down here we have a deer who is eaten by a coyote. That coyote could die at one day and the decomposers decompose its body back into plants. So sunlight gives the energy to those plants, and then the plants are eaten by the deer. So this is a single relationship that we see. So this would be known as a food chain. Every time energy is being passed from one organism to the other, it's going to go up or down something called a trophic level. And you're going to hear me say trophic level a lot over the next couple of weeks. So trophic levels are the levels of nourishment in a food chain. Energy flows from the lowest trophic level to the highest. So obviously you're going to have to start with those autotrophs, or the producers. These are going to be the organisms that can produce usable energy from sources that most organisms cannot get energy from, such as the sun or such as inorganic material through chemosynthesis. The primary consumers will be the organisms that will directly consume the producers, and then you're going to go up level after level. So a food web is going to show the complex networks of the feeding relationships that show the flow of energy within and beyond a given ecosystem. So in a food web, you're going to see multiple food chains. Here is an example of a food web. So you can see that here's a food chain from the grass to the rabbits to the fox. Here's another food chain, the grass, the squirrels, the fox, squirrels also by the hawks and the owls. So if you have multiple relationships within an ecosystem, this would be a food web. You will be creating a food web with the energy flow activity that you're going to do after watching this video. So we're talking about how this energy is being passed on from trophic level to trophic level. So there are specific feeding strategies that organisms use in order to survive. Some of these you've probably heard before, but I know that we haven't talked about two in my class, which are specialists and generalists. Specialists would be consumers that feed on one specific organism or small number of organisms. So an example of a specialist would be like a koala bear. A koala bear eats eucalyptus leaves, so a very specific type of food source. So they would be considered specialists. Compared to generalists, which would be consumers with a varying diet. The best generalist that comes to mind right away is like a raccoon. A raccoon will eat everything in between, whatever's in your garbage to acorns to whatever it can find. So if you're thinking about surviving strategies, generalists have a better chance to survive because they have more food sources that they can consume, whereas if something happens to the eucalyptus leaves, there's no way that koala bears could survive. So there's an advantage to being a generalist compared to a specialist. Next are herbivores. Hopefully you know that these are organisms who only consume plants. Then you have carnivores. These are organisms that only consume animal products. Then you have omnivores, which consume both herbivores and both plants and animals. So most humans are omnivores unless you're a vegetarian. Then you have detritivores, which are going to be organisms that specialize in eating dead organisms. An example of this would be a vulture. So the vulture does not kill the animal, but will come along after it dies. In comparison to decomposers, decomposers are organisms that will break down decaying dead either animal or plant matter. You should know the kingdom that is associated with the decomposers, which would be the fungus kingdom. Alright, the next thing is how much energy is actually being transferred from one trophic level to the next. So most of the energy in an ecosystem is lost as it is transferred between trophic levels, and I mentioned this on Tuesday. Animals are terrible, or organisms in general are terrible about converting all of the potential energy into usable energy. And see right here you have the magic number. Only 10% is made available to the next trophic level. 90% is lost to the environment as heat. So energy pyramids compare the energy used by producers with other primary, secondary, and tertiary consumers. So here's an example of an energy pyramid. So you can see down here where your producers are, there are 1,000 units of energy. So you have the phytoplankton, the algae. These filter feeders would be the primary consumers that eat the producers. And look how much energy is available on this next trophic level, only 100 units. So this would be 10% conversion. If you go up to the first order carnivores, which eat the filter feeders, they only have 10 units. And then the second order carnivores only have 1 unit. So an ecological efficiency of 10% is assumed for each level. That is going to be the magic number. And that is as far as we're going to go in our notes. So what I want you to do now is to read the class set of instructions that are located in your side table folders for your energy flow activity. Please read the procedures one by one. You have manipulatives that are laminated that you can use to kind of move and brainstorm. But what you have to create is on a white sheet of paper, you either need to draw pictures of the organisms that you are looking at, or you can write them. You can just write shark or human or fisherman, I think is on there. But you need to follow these procedures one by one and complete this activity. Once you're done, hold on to it, and we're going to talk about it on Friday. All right? I think that's it. So y'all just get started, and please be on your best behavior.